what we're going to do is you're going to observe today a conversation between her and I. We have no idea where this is going to go, but it's going to talk. We're going to talk about her business and what's going on at Live Sotheby's in Colorado. But before we do that, I'm going to have her introduce herself, and then I will ask you also to leave all questions till the very end, okay? And at that point in time, we'll turn the cameras off, recorders off, etc. This is all going to be videotaped for you guys to see at another time, so you can continue to learn it over and over and over and over again. But what I wanted you to be here and see it live, okay? And we're going to take this and we're going to run with it, and this is not going to be the last time we're going to do this with a particular agent. We have a lot of very successful agents that have done very well with the program and the training, and we're going to have panels and stuff like that once every month or 6 weeks or so until you guys get sick of it. If you stop coming to these, then I'll know that you're getting a little irritated or annoyed by the whole thing, but hopefully you'll get a lot of value out of it. But before we start, I'm going to let Mackenzie introduce herself, and we'll get right into this, and we'll have our fireside chat.
I know.
Yep.
I feel like I should be standing, but I'll sit.
Yes.
I'm Mackenzie. I moved to Chicago, I guess it was 2011-ish. And I've done real estate for a really long time, but because of my husband's job, I had to jump around a fair amount. So started in Arizona, where I'm from, and then went to Cincinnati, worked for a developer there for a little bit, and then came to Chicago and really kind of was really, really excited to be a part of this brand. And I'm very type A, I guess you could say. And
you'll know, you'll find out by the end of it what her percentage is.
So I really kind of went into it, was very, very excited to be a part of this brand, and thought that I could like conquer the entire state. And I had a plan for it, and it was not organized, and it was chaotic, and I was really, really lucky enough to be in Jim's first class, and I was able to really take some initial direction and put some significant blinders on to really kind of push my career down a path that was predictable and dependable and something that I felt very, very confident in. And so therefore I didn't really stray and was able to, kind of stay down a path that I knew he believed in. And I just needed to kind of get there as well. So since then, I think my first year I did okay. My second year I did better. My third year I did great. And then I got pregnant with twins. And I was out of here, so.
Well, she didn't give you numbers, but I'm going to give you numbers. By the time her second full year, she did $20 million in production, and that was moving from Cincinnati, not knowing anybody. So it was all really very much based in farming and geo-farming and building her business through that piece. And so I want to kind of brag on that for a while, because I think that's, as you guys know, not an easy thing to do, but she was very focused on it.
Yeah. I mean, I really just picked the area that I lived in because I knew it the best, and I focused on any marketing dollars, any listing efforts was all in that little neighborhood. Naturally, I ended up getting buyers and other clients outside of that, but so long as all of my business efforts were in one specific little area and trying to be known as like the expert in that area, that's really what I think allowed me to springboard really quickly.
And then you ended up having that success, and then you moved to
call it quits. Like, you do a great job, and then you're out of there. So, got pregnant. Ended up moving to Denver, Colorado, for my husband's job and because of the babies. And my whole life got turned upside down because I was the breadwinner, and then all of that completely came to a halt, pretty much. And took about a year off and had to totally recreate myself again in Denver. And that was, nobody knew who I was. The brand didn't know, I knew I had to be at Sotheby's. I just knew that that was the only way to springboard to true success. But I didn't know the neighborhood I lived in. I was like, I didn't know what day it was half the time with the babies. And so I just had to really start over again. And it was really the third time I had started over my entire career. But
18-month-old twin boys.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, but the part that I knew that I could do once I wanted to start working again, the thing that I knew that I could do is just build off of what I had done in Chicago. I knew exactly the game plan. I knew exactly the path to go down, and I think that's why I've been able to reach that success level in Denver far quicker than I did in Chicago.
What's been your biggest challenge? Like, you know,
Oh boy.
let's use definitive. What sucks? I mean, like, what?
Waking up
what
at
is
4:30?
hard? Well, like, you know, obviously she's had this success and this is great, and she's going to do 20 million her first full year in Denver, brand new to the business, amazing. But there's got to be something that is, what's your biggest challenge? Like, you know, what are you, on a daily basis, what really is hard for you?
So, and I don't know if this is everybody, but I'm like a forever learner. Like, I need to have like I always, and this is from Jim too, like I don't listen to really like music anymore. I listen to like educational podcasts, and I'm getting my master's in real estate development at the same time. And like I have all these inputs of like, or I listen to his Monday morning talks or something, or you read cool articles and you're like, oh, that'd be a really cool thing to implement in my business. But it was all very, very, very chaotic in my head. And so I really needed it to be organized and focused. And when I take notes at a conference, because I went to like every conference imaginable, when I take notes, I have to be able to implement it, or else it was a total waste of going there. So I think that clearing that up in my head was a big challenge for me. And the thing that kind of sucks is waking up early. And I mean, I really don't like doing it, but I think Jim and I talked at lunch today. Since I became a mom, so much of my why is that when I'm with them, I don't think about work at all. And I feel so confident in the business that I've built that it allows me to have a very, very clear mind when I'm with them. So I wake up at 4:30 and it's no fun, and I'd love to have like a third glass of wine at night, but I don't, because I know that I need to wake up at 4:30 and get all my business done before everyone else does. So yeah,
let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about your day. Like,
yeah.
Let's just talk. You got twin 18-month-old boys. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Like, that must
They're
be
real expensive.
expensive.
Really expensive.
And like, and they're a lot of work. I mean,
they're a lot of work.
They're a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun now. I think I was in like a major fog the first year.
Let's
but
contrast
it's better.
that, though. What your life was now. Let's talk about what your life was when it was here. Okay, that's a lot more fun, right?
It's so much more fun. I think we were talking at lunch, like my why before babies was like I wanted to go to nice restaurants 6 nights a week and travel internationally when I could have time off. But now it is so much more about I need my business to run on autopilot. I need to feel confident in my business so that I can like live my life and not feel like I was drowning every single day. And that was even more important now. Than it was before.
What was before babies and before you?
Yeah.
What time did you get up? What was your schedule then?
So I wasn't great at following your lead. I did wake up 1 hour earlier, but I didn't wake up at like 4:30 like you do, like I do today. But I woke up earlier and I got stuff done. But honestly, it was like a constant phone calls telling my husband I'm going to be late to dinner because I'm with this client, and it was just way more chaotic. It worked, but it was way more. I was still building at that point.
Yeah.
So
I work every minute of every day just to
totally
get the momentum started.
Totally.
And get it going.
Right. Right. Just to start pumping that well. So I feel like I was a lot busier, and I feel like now I'm a lot more under control, and I've got it kind of reined in a little bit where it's definitely more.
You just felt like maybe that you could just wing it a little bit more because you didn't have this responsibility that you have now?
Yeah. I think that my why has definitely changed, and it has forced me to be ultra efficient and, again, ultra confident in my business. And if I have 3 things to do every morning, then those 3 things are done before anyone else starts their day.
Okay, so that's kind of where I want to go next. So we're going to get into more detail of what you do between 4:30 and 7, because I know there's a lot that goes on then.
Yeah.
But what do you do? What happens at 7 o'clock?
In the morning?
Yeah.
That is like straight baby time.
Okay.
From 7 to 9, the babies are up, and I'm not doing work, because I've already done more in those 2.5 hours before they wake up than most people do in their whole day. Because once everyone else starts waking up, and then you just have like emails galore, appointments that you need to run to, listing presentations that you have to throw together quick because you have an opportunity from a postcard lead or something. So My day really is about managing the to-dos and not building the business. And I see that as two totally different, efforts.
Talk about that for a second.
I wake up super early before the sun's out, and it's very, very, very calm, and it allows me to be very, very efficient in what I do. I'm insanely organized, where I have 10 things I do every morning, and the second I'm done with that, then I've done my stuff to build my business.
So you got a morning ritual template, like it happens
totally, and there's like pictures of Spain nearby, and there's like, there's a reason that it's built. It's a very private area that is, it's my office, but it's kind of built for success, if you will. And it's got like a whiteboard of all my clients I'm currently working with. It's got a checklist of all the things I do for the day, all the things I do for a week, all the things I do in a month, based on each spoke of my business. So what I do from a social media perspective, what I do for each farm, what I do for non-real estate related groups. There's a
this
definite.
Will be recorded, so don't be like. It's part of this is going to go like this, and that's the whole point that I want you guys to get, because you've got to understand in the frequency in which a top performer operates at. Okay, if that ceiling starts to get set for you, then you'll be able to raise to that. But this is what it takes if you want to do 20 million your first year in Denver. Okay, it isn't just getting up and winging it. Okay, that doesn't work.
Well, I couldn't do that. I just couldn't. I couldn't be anything but super efficient and know exactly what I was doing every single day. I had to do that. Otherwise, my mind was way too cluttered during important other times of life, like being with family or whatever, or even interactions with clients. Like if I had 4 emails in the back of my mind that I needed to have sent, but I'm in a listing presentation, that like drives me nuts. And I had to have all that business stuff finished for the day, so that maybe I didn't have anything to do that day and I could just enjoy my family that day. But I knew that my business building efforts, I felt confident enough in them, and they were checked off for the day, so I was done.
Do your clients know your non-negotiable times? Like that from 7 to 9?
Yeah. I very rarely ever. I think I'm very authentic, but I'm also, I think, super. I feel as if that I bring a ton of value to every situation, and I'm very authentic, so they know my situation. Everybody knows my life, and it's more genuine, and I'm on top of my game when I'm working with clients, but they love that they know that I have a second part of my life.
They respect that and love it.
Totally, yeah.
They probably, again, you're likable, and that's
right.
why people hire you, right? So what happens at 9 o'clock?
All
hell breaks loose. That's when the business is in full go mode.
Well, honestly, I feel really confident and calm. I just feel more. The babies are taken care of by 9 a.m. and I don't really have any business building things left to do, and so I'm doing showings or meeting stagers or photographers, or that's more runaround stuff.
Execution of your business.
Yeah.
And then what happens in the evening?
It depends. I mean, a lot of times I get done kind of early because I'm not like working my butt off and staying up late. I'm usually done by it depends, but 4 o'clock. And I mean, I know sometimes showings will go later, but I've been able to get up early enough to where I don't worry about my business at all. And if my appointments are done for the day, I mean, I definitely take advantage of being out in the open, but one thing that I do is I'm never like a secret agent, I think, that you talked about. Like, I am a farmer. Like, I live in the neighborhood that I try to do most of my business because I don't want to drive an hour and a half to go do something. I live where I work, and I'm very, very, very present. There's not a store that doesn't know who I am. There's not a restaurant that doesn't know who I am.
That's a perfect segue into what I want to talk about next, which is, first and foremost, that 2.5 hours in the morning is non-negotiable.
Totally.
You would not be where you're at now without that time.
Never.
0 chance. Okay.
I mean, I maybe, but I'd be crazy, and the genuine time with my family would not be the same.
Okay.
I wouldn't have as clear of a mind, and I don't know. For me personally, I have to have my to-do list checked off before I can be authentic with any other aspect of my life.
Okay, cool. Let's move right into your business, which is why a lot of people are here today to understand what it is that got you to 20 million your first year. You in Denver, you back to Chicago, you kind of perfected it, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about Chicago and what you did here and
Okay.
where you ran your farm
Yeah.
and what you did, and then we'll jump over to,
Yeah.
to Denver
Sure.
and that whole thing.
So I lived at 340 East Randolph, down in Lakeshore East, where, do you guys all know where that is? Like on, okay. So it's a very much like a very isolated little area. You got the lake and then Randolph and Michigan, and so it's with a park in the middle, and we loved it because we had dogs and we walked along the lake, and I just picked the 4 most expensive buildings in that neighborhood, and I became an expert at them, and I sent monthly pieces. I volunteered to be in charge of the dog park, which was a terrible idea. I was
Did
all,
what?
yeah. Like I was in charge of enforcing whether or not people picked up their dog poop at that dog park. It was a terrible idea.
Oh my God.
But I mean, I was very, very present. I mean, I was always at that grocery store. I was always at all the restaurants. But I never really strayed out of that area. And so because of that, nobody knew those buildings better than me. And to this day, I still send pieces, and there's not a month that goes by that I don't get a phone call.
Let's real quick before we go into that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that conversation you and I had in September of 2011.
Yeah.
Or October of 2011. What was your mindset at that point in time? Like you came in.
I was going to conquer the entire state of Illinois. Like I was going to figure out how to be great at selling real estate all over Illinois. And I think I come from like a family of architects and real estate brokers, and I grew up in this industry, so I get the industry, but so many brokers that I've interacted with are just kind of okay at everything and will say yes to everything, and the people that really dominated were phenomenal at one building or one neighborhood or something where they could provide so much more value to the equation than any other broker, because everyone else was just, sure, I'll sell over there, or sure, I'm an expert in here, but if you get known for something, and that's how I became, then you have like an instant open door and so much more credibility, and that's kind of what I really just springboarded on.
So that conversation was you were thinking everywhere, and we talked
Totally.
about we got into business planning.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? What's going to be your focus? What are people going to know you for?
Yeah, and I think Jim's point of like, rather than being like okay at something, or even if you think you're great, you're never going to be better than the person that's been doing it for 30 years. But I guarantee you, nobody knew those 4 buildings better than I did when I lived here. I mean, I'm sure things have changed, but I really wanted nobody to have the upper hand on those 4 buildings. Like I may have to fight a little bit for listings here and there on other buildings, but nobody did. Or I never had to on those 4 buildings.
Okay, so we had that conversation, and I said, if I remember correctly, I said, what is going to be your niche?
Yeah.
And you just directly went to, well, I live at 340 East
Yeah.
Randolph.
Yeah, and I just picked the 4 most expensive buildings. I could have picked other buildings, but I picked ones that I thought I'd be passionate about selling. And just a slight segue, in Denver, I did the same thing. In my neighborhood, I drove up and I walked with the babies every single street, 13 miles a day, and I picked each house that I wanted to sell. And it wasn't like the old crappy tear down, because that would mean I would need to find like a developer to remodel it. It was like the younger couple that I would probably mesh with well, that maybe had kids too. And so I literally logged every single address by hand.
I did it too.
Yeah. And I figured out the houses that I wanted to sell. And so that is like my money list, and that is the list where I feel like all of my business will come from, because they've all been hand selected and I'm passionate about them. And so yeah, that's what I did here. I picked those 4 buildings and I developed an entire farming campaign around them.
Let's slow down for a second and let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Like what was step 1?
So a lot of what I do, honestly, takes a lot of time and energy. And I think that is one thing that I know.
I want to rewind there for a second. A lot of this up front takes a lot of time and energy. Okay, this isn't just something you do. This is a lot of upfront timing. So sorry to interrupt.
And if you don't do that again, and if you just include it in part of your like 8 to 5 time, it'll never get done. It might get done the first month, but it won't get done the second month. And I honestly did not get a phone call from my Chicago farming campaign until 8 months later. So that was 8 months of like waking up early, 8 months of spending a crap ton of money, 8 months of tons of effort and not seeing any results. But I mean, I was so confident in kind of the direction that Jim pointed me down that I just kept doing it. And so it allowed me to not second guess it, and I just kept moving forward. And like I said, to this day, I still get phone calls every month.
Okay, well, you said 2 things earlier I want to talk about.
Yeah.
your mailing campaign and your anniversary campaign.
Yeah.
Is this Denver related or Chicago related?
So I do it in both.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about Chicago, and we'll wrap up Chicago.
Yeah.
And talk about trends, and when you start, you talked about at the 8-month mark.
Yeah.
Boom, it started to hit, and let's talk about what happened after the 8-month mark.
So I think at the 8-month mark, I got a call from a guy that wanted to meet at the grocery store, Mariano's downstairs, and talk about a unit that he owned. Well, that unit turned into actually 8 properties that he owned in the 2 buildings, and he wanted to get rid of them all. And so,
was he a Chicago resident, or?
Yep. No, they were all investment properties. So he lived in Wheaton and owned 8 units, and they were got on the Chandler.
Did his cards go to Wheaton, or did they go to the?
They went to Wheaton.
They went to Wheaton.
So I made a point of always sending to the tax mailing address, because I'd say 75% of my phone calls from my postcard campaigns were always out-of-state people who got annoyed, who got this postcard from this girl every month who told them what's going on in their piece of real estate that they owned in Chicago. So
you were their connection.
So yeah, and it was consistent, and it was valuable, and it wasn't talking about me. It wasn't talking about my brand. It was data that they wanted to see, so they knew how much their real estate was worth. And it looked great, and it was the look was always the same. It was consistent. It was expected. It was what totally made the phone ring. And I had separate phone numbers on each postcard campaign, so I could tell when the phone calls came in which campaign they came from, which is kind of like a whole nother thing. But yeah, so that's really at the 8-month mark that I got that phone call, and it talk about like marketing to your sphere. That guy like turned into so many more deals, and I think that's really what I took the most from Jim's class is 1 listing should never, ever, ever, ever equal 1 listing. Like 1 listing has to equal 3 listings. That's just you should just assume that.
And
so,
buyers.
Yeah, totally, yeah. But for me, on like who was really pushing this farming listing side, I had to create a plan so that 1 listing always turned into 3. And so then his attorney owned 3 units that he needed to sell, and then his like tenant wanted to buy a place, and then like this guy. So it just like totally spiderwebbed out from there.
So that value of your marketing campaign, it's hard to even put a number on it.
Well,
you could probably.
Yeah, it was a way for me to convey, like I've always had this problem of like faking it. Like I'm terrible at faking it, and when I moved here, I had no reputation, and so I used the Sotheby's brand to really springboard my reputation. And I relied on the Sotheby's brand to get there. So, I mean, I had to find a way to create value, because then I felt really, really confident. And then I knew that I could provide value to that client, and I could, be the earn your commission. But that's the type of person I am. I had to be in that position.
Let's talk about how since you just touched on the brand, talk about how you used that brand, how you marketed yourself, how you branded yourself.
Yeah.
And you kind of got up, you showed up, that whole bit, that I thought you already.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for 13 years in like a variety of different aspects, working for builders, developers, 5 different states. I mean, I'm licensed in like too many states, but I made a choice to go with a very, very high-end brand that I knew that my dollar per effort would be, more efficient, right? So I wanted to be representing $1, $2, $3, $4 million properties, and so I couldn't do that, I felt, at other brands. And so I wanted a brand that was very special, international, that really raised the bar in the profession. I have always said it's very, very easy to differentiate yourself, because there's a lot of brokers out there that aren't great, and so I just really wanted to uphold that, and I wanted to seem like an elite resource for people. This was a career for me. It wasn't like, I'm going to make it, I'm going to take advantage of these next couple years of a crazy market. So even after the babies, I work at the coffee shop in my farm every single day, and I have a branded laptop. I'm not even kidding. And we
got to pull that out here before it's.
I have like a Sotheby's coffee mug. I go for a walk. I have a Sotheby's hat on with the babies. Like nobody guesses what I do at all.
Hey Lisa, can you grab her laptop out of her purse right here? Sorry, McKinsey. Okay.
So
we're going to get into the whole branding piece here in a second. I thought that was.
So I send mailers out to my farm now with a very, very recognizable logo on it, and you guys can have any of these things, but
we're going to get into that. Yeah, we're going to get into Denver.
Yeah. But I have, like, you can kind of see the bottom of this part. So it's a very, like, this bridge in Denver is very recognizable, and it's kind of, and this is like, all of my pieces are identical every single time, just with different data. So when I sit at a coffee shop like this, like, people know who I am, and people, like,
You can't see it.
figure it
Get up and take a
out.
look.
Like, people, like, that's
back
the
of
bridge.
her.
That's the bridge in Lohi where I live, that everybody knows who I am because I have this on here. So, I mean, I wanted to, like, I think Jim and I were talking at lunch, like, I have to do everything 100%. Like, time with my family has to be 100%. My career has to be 100% because why not? Like, why do anything less than that? So I think I told Jim, like, even after the babies, I'm like, oh, I can just wear Lululemon to the coffee shop. It's no problem. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, I work for Sotheby's. Like, I showered, I put heels on, and I got to the coffee shop, and everyone else was wearing beanies, and I'm, like, in a full suit, and everyone's like, who the hell's this chick, right? Like, so I just, you know, and then the coffee shop people know who you are, like the owners of the coffee shop. And so anytime anyone's like, oh, I should move to this area, I love it up here, they're like, go talk to Mackenzie, she works up here. Like, that's just how it happens. And so much of, like, the vibe that I gave off was everybody wants, like, an A+ broker to represent them. They don't, you know, want the casual, you know, especially if you're buying $1 million property. Yeah, you want somebody who seems super on top of it. And so I had to present myself like that, or else I didn't feel like I was.
Yeah, I mean, you did that in Chicago right off the bat.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in Chicago, you did, just to recap, monthly mailings. Did you do a quarterly newsletter too? Right?
So I did, you mean like a mail out?
Yeah, you did.
I mean, there was not 3 weeks that went by that the people that I wanted to sell didn't get something from me.
Okay, so 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You had a Facebook page
Yeah.
that you dropped content on every
Yeah.
morning, and it was on your list on your
Totally.
morning ritual
Yeah,
list,
and it's
right?
5 minutes, and it helps you know the market, like, right? You know what happened in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
And there's different theories of, like, if it's a building specific or neighborhood specific.
Yeah.
Do you do different things?
So let me ask you this: what was the typical conversation with these people that would call you? How many of them did you, like, go on listing presentations and you were up against 4 people, or how many just hired you?
I honestly don't know if I had any competition, but I never didn't get a listing from a postcard phone call. There's not one phone call that I got that didn't turn into a listing because nobody knew those 4 buildings better than I did. So I could close them on the phone. Like, to this day, I can close them on the phone because I know your doorman, and your doorman knows me. I know every single thing about your amenity level. I know everything that's going on in your association. And yeah, it's such a bummer that this is happening in the building right now. And do you know about your rental rates? And, like, it was closed on the phone, and it was a meeting to sign the paperwork. It was never, I've never lost a listing from a postcard phone call ever.
They just give up, right? Like, it's value, and it's like done.
I just made it super easy. And they never questioned one thing I said, and I was a solution to their problem.
Okay, awesome. That was good, right? Yeah. So we're gonna move. That was Chicago. Let's move into Denver.
Yeah.
So you took a year and a half-ish off.
Yeah.
Right?
To be like, yeah. I did. I took about a year off. Yeah.
Aaron Margolis is still really sad about that.
I know.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah. But you went there, then all of a sudden before you got into, you obviously wanted to be at Sotheby's.
Yeah, it was no choice. There's other brokerages there, and I think there's one that even has a slightly larger market share, but nobody dominates the high end. And I knew the brand, honestly, better than a lot of people in the Denver office know it, and I knew how to leverage it, and I knew that Denver is, got a fair amount of international influence in the sense of there's just a crap ton of people moving there. And, just like Chicago, where people can appreciate and recognize the blue sign.
Okay, so you picked
Sotheby's.
Yeah. So you went in and you picked you just, obviously it was an obvious choice because you were Sotheby's here and there. You wanted to pick the brands similar. And then how did you pick your niche there?
So I knew that I didn't want to be driving all over the place, and I picked where I lived because just like in Chicago, nobody knew that market better than me. And if I'm walking in that, I'm a big walker. If If I walk that neighborhood 2 hours every single day, like I'm gonna know everything. I'm gonna know every new construction thing that's going up. I'm gonna know every new retail that's about to go up, every restaurant that's about to open. And so I could truly provide value to someone who was either selling their place or trying to move into that area. So again, all my marketing dollars went into the neighborhood that I lived. And that was a choice. I know some people don't wanna live where they work, but.
So draw us a picture, okay? A lot of us have been to Colorado
Yeah.
to ski or
Yeah.
whatever. Like where are you and compared to downtown and stuff like that?
So downtown Denver is gotten pretty neat in the sense that there's a great public transportation there now. It's got a light rail all the way out to the airport, which is opening in a couple weeks. Very cool kind of downtown walkable scene. Right north of that is this area called the Lower Highlands area that is now connected over the freeway. So it is very much like Bucktown. It's super walkable, tons of restaurants and retail, and I wanted to retain some level of coolness. Yeah. So that's why I moved there. I was didn't go to the burbs at all. So stayed in an area that it was super walkable. We're still only like a one-car household there, which is crazy and like becoming the thing there too. But yeah, it is just north of downtown. It is a very similar price point to Bucktown, like older, well, a little bit, but there's older teardowns that lot value is $500-600, and then new construction single family be $1.6 to $2 million.
So, Bucktown.
Yeah.
So, like, what is the typical makeup there? Is it a condo, townhome, single family makeup?
Yeah, there's 4 products in that area. Condo, which makes up about 10% of the inventory. They build duplexes, so side-by-side duplexes on one lot that end up being about 4,500 square feet, 5 and 6 bedrooms. And those really cap out at about $1 million. Single families and a lot of vertical townhome construction, so stacked townhomes where you have garage, office, kitchen, living room, bedroom, roof deck. So very, very, very vertical, and a lot of those over there. But those are $700,000, $800,000, $900,000.
What's the market? Is it selling quick there?
It's very much the reason that I loved it too. It's a short-term hold market. Like you have 2 bedrooms. That second kid comes, you're out. So the hold time in that neighborhood is like 4 years, which is far lower than numerous other parts of town. And so the turnover was really quick. The demographic I thought would fit great. They value the brand. They value this like value add from your broker, and it's a product that I liked. I mean, it was like big, fancy, cool. You know, not the thing where I'm going to be like, oh my God, we need to send somebody in there because we have a hoarder. Like that was not the type of listing that I was dealing with. I was trying to make things efficient. So
you guys moved there too, right? I mean,
totally moved there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're happy.
Totally moved there. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's talk about you came out of retirement, right? And part of you probably, I think if I remember correctly, you had a little bit of a like planning prep time, right? Where you're like, how am I going to do this? So let's talk about like what you did and like how.
So I felt as if I was super organized here. I had to get exponentially more organized in Denver because I had to be super confident in what I was executing because I was spending a crap ton more money. A lot more money. Every farm that I've since expanded to 4 farms, so 4 neighborhoods. Every farm was about $500 to $1,000 a month. And if I knew that I wouldn't add an additional farm unless I was ready to do that every single month for a year before I would get any dollar return from that. Okay. So there was an extreme plan on every single thing that I did, and
you're spending a lot of money. So this was
which has already paid for itself, but it's scary to do in the beginning. It's really scary.
Okay.
But yeah, I had an extreme plan I looked at it 2 different ways. My business and what I did with every listing to turn it from 1 to 3. And my business building stuff had makeup of things that I do daily, weekly, monthly, and my listing side had a 300-point checklist that I did to make sure that it went from 1 to 3.
It's like it's terrific. Let's talk about, again, you moved in. What did you do on month 1 with your farm? That's when you started the walking, right? Like
so I went.
Boys, like, got out there and started walking.
Yeah, so nobody knew those streets better than I did because I wasn't just exporting on MLS. I was walking up and down those streets every single day and saying hi to people. I was thinking about actually getting like a branded shade cover for the stroller, like a Sotheby's thing, just because I was like, everybody knows the mom with twins, and so like everybody knows, like because I was there every single day walking that neighborhood for 2 hours every day. So Yeah, I really knew every street and why certain blocks sold, and then I went home and researched, and I really had to become an expert in a very, very short time from somebody. There was a lot of there's 4 brokers that really dominate up there, but you know, I've been in those situations before, and I never thought that I couldn't do better. I knew I was super confident in my process, and I knew that even if there were established brokers there, I could definitely do better than them.
Talk about that for a second. Super confident in your process.
Yeah.
That first time in Chicago, you had to learn it, and I
had to create it.
Well, and you believe it now that you've seen it once.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like Denver was a piece of cake. I mean, I even got a little nervous sometimes, and my husband's like, "What do you mean? You've already done this? Like, what are you talking about? You've already done this whole thing." I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right." And I've never, you know, I was so confident because it had worked in Chicago, and I went to Denver. I'm like, "Oh man, nobody's really like calling themselves as the expert or trying to convey a ton of value." There's like a fair amount of like cut rate brokerages there too, and I love going on those appointments. I love it because it's just like the easiest listing to win over. But I felt so confident because I had done it in Chicago and it had worked that it was just about just doing it. And I knew it was a crap ton of effort on the front end. I knew that I had to export tons of data and analyze it and figure out where, why certain builders were getting better per square foot than other builders. I had to learn every single builder because the second that I do 2 open houses a week, and the second that I do those open houses, there's not a person that doesn't come through the door and leave and be like, holy shit, that girl knows more about this neighborhood than anyone I've met today. And so I knew that I had to be an expert. And so it was data pulling, it was creating templates for my monthly pieces, it was making sure all the retail people knew me. It was a lot of walking around and just learning.
So you created your list, right?
Yeah.
You created your niche first. You created your list.
Yeah.
You started becoming present in your farm.
Totally.
You became an expert.
Totally.
Sound familiar? You've heard this before, right? Became an expert.
Yeah.
In your farm, and then you executed on a daily basis with postcards, social media.
Yeah. So the thing that's been huge for me is this anniversary campaign that people are like, I get phone calls of people that don't want to sell their place.
Can we start sending some of the stuff
Sure.
around? All right, so the next thing that we want to get into is, again, a little bit more about her monthly stuff in Denver, okay? Which is, like I said, she discovered her niche, she created her list by walking around, okay? Then she started marketing to her farm, which I will let you pick up from there. Tell us everything.
So I have about 500 people in each farm, and it costs about 75-ish cents to $1 per person per month. So the top 20% cost me a lot more because I send them all the Sotheby's stuff, like the Art and Home magazines. We have a fairly big ownership of mountain homes, and so the office puts out a beautiful resort piece. And so the top people that own the most expensive homes get probably $5 of my dollars every month.
So you define the top 20% by the value of the home.
Yeah.
But does anybody sneak in there that's a past client, or we'll get into it?
Well, that's just farming stuff.
That's just farming. Okay.
On my, I really built my business as a pie chart, and every little section of pie has its own process. So one little piece of the pie is the farm.
That's
I've got like a sphere is a different piece of pie, and that's got its own thing.
Talk about that here shortly.
So my list is about 500 people long per farm. The top 20% value-wise and how long you've lived there. If you've lived there for 3-ish years, you're getting a lot of my attention. The likelihood of you selling is really a lot higher than someone just moved in last year. I hand write anniversary cards every single month. So part of my daily routine is to, at the end of the month, I export anything that has sold. What is this month, April? So at the beginning of April, I exported anyone who purchased in March 2015, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7. I go back 10 years. So that turns into probably a list of 50. I research each of those 50. I go on MLS, make sure they haven't resold since then, pull the tax record, make sure they haven't sold off MLS or anything, and that whittles it down to probably like 30. So those 30 people have owned their house, have purchased their house that last month, either 1 to 10 years ago. So I write a handwritten note, and it's it's not very long, but it's probably 5 sentences that talks about, congratulations on your 5-year anniversary in your home. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood since you moved in. One of the biggest changes may be in the value of your home. Please, one of my pieces that went around, like, I produce this monthly to give you an idea of how the value has changed since you purchased. I, again, know all the restaurants in the neighborhood, so they give me free dinner cards or something, and I say, celebrate on me at the new wine bar down the street. And I can't tell you how many people call from that. I've had other brokers call me from that, and they said, my client showed me this card that you wrote them and got pissed off that I didn't congratulate them, and they made $30,000 on the deal and didn't even have the time to write a handwritten note. So it takes a long time, but I write 5 every morning. And that is just part of my process. And it is an element of, if I do 5 things for every farm, that's one of them. The Sotheby's congratulations cards are beautiful. They, talk about they furthermore exhibit the brand, and they are something that I think is totally worth the investment.
You can order those on Express Docs.
Yeah. That piece that Judy has is what I do quarterly to the neighborhoods. It's with the 3 maps on it. It is something that also probably gets the majority of the interest from people. It's actually something that I make. My marketing department doesn't make it because I realized many years ago that I didn't want to be, I wanted to be in control of my timing and my destiny, and so I just figured out how to do something great, and that piece is 100% designed by me. Marketing just puts it together. So I don't,
The low-high piece?
the trifold, yeah. The trifold piece yeah. So you can make those custom maps, and they take a fair amount of time to do, but if you spend 1 hour a month doing it and throwing it together, it turns out, I think, beautiful, and people love that. It's a visual representation of each type of product and where it's sold within Low-High. So it shows you a pinpoint for every single condo sale, a pinpoint for every single townhome sale, and a pinpoint for every single family sale.
That's a Google map.
Now you can customize Google Maps. You can have a separate background. You can have different colored filters. You can import your data. I mean, just play around with it, but I think they turn out beautifully. And I can't tell you how many brokers I've had come up to me and be like, how the hell did you do that? But the truth is, it just takes time and energy and consistency. But I think it's a piece that comes out really nice, and that way you're not depending on your marketing team to always produce this product. I mean, I just export the image and they implement it into the piece.
Now, I want to just remind everybody, she has twin 18-month-olds. Okay? So if she can find the time, I think a lot of people can. Just that 4:30 to 7 in the morning is when you do this stuff.
Yeah, and some people are night people, and honestly, I didn't wake up at 4:30 when I was in Chicago, but I felt a lot more cluttered in my mind. And maybe that's just how I handle things, but I just felt like I was always running, and I don't feel like that now because I don't have a choice anymore. Like, I just can't afford to not be present when it matters. So, like I said, there's 5 things I do for every farm. The anniversary campaign, I think, is really phenomenal and easy-ish. The monthly piece, the postcard campaign, I'm super present in the neighborhoods. Every retailer and restaurant owner knows who I am. But once those 5 things are done from that farm, I never think about it. I just wait for the phone to ring.
How do you get email addresses, and how do you use Resora?
I use Resora all the time. I use it very strategically. I get super annoyed when things are not valuable to the reader because I think you just lose instant credibility. So one part of my spoke of my pie is every single month I send a past client a personalized email. It's not like this, the market is doing this, which you can also do, but I specifically go and I pull comps and run a CMA for that client every single month.
How many a month?
Well, now I do it just in Denver, so I've got 20-ish, so that's 20 emails a month. And I pull a CMA for their specific property, and I write them a personalized email. And I say, hey, just to let you know, this one sold here, this did this is still on the market. Oh my gosh, we toured this when we were buying your place. And it's a very, very custom private thing personal thing that is not this mass thing. I send it through Resora so I can track it and make sure they opened it, and if they don't, then I call them and I say, hey, I sent you guys an email, did you get it? So I use contactually a lot, and I think my buckets are really, really intentional. I have a separate campaign for each bucket. There's a ton of stuff that I do before a listing goes live where I use Contactually and Resora to try to create front-end buzz. My Contactually and my Resora have the same labels for buckets and what do they call them?
Distribution groups?
Distribution groups. Same exact ones. So the end of every month, I just export it, override, it's done. Yeah, I use it a lot.
Do you use the market reports on Resora? You do your own?
Well, our office does their own.
Okay.
I mean, I do my own if it's going, again, I never, and again, this takes a lot of effort. I don't do anything that is like mass distribution unless it's like inviting them to an event or something. Everything is very, very personal. I'm not going to send you something on Bucktown if you live in the loop. Like, I just never did that. So, like the videos that you guys were doing, I thought were awesome, and that would go to my Gold Coast clientele, you know? But I had everything that I did was very specific.
Based on distribution group. So you broke it down.
Which
to
was by
location.
buckets, yeah.
Okay.
Which was by buckets and contactually.
Okay, so you're just starting to get this business rolling in Denver.
Yeah.
4 farms, spend $500 a month on this farm, but you
I started with one farm.
You started with one.
Just my neighborhood.
Just your
And as
neighborhood.
soon as I got a deal, which paid off the marketing for the year, I added another one. And the game plan was every quarter to add a farm. So my first farm was the neighborhood. The second farm, I had an opportunity to co-list with an A-plus broker in a high-rise downtown, because that was primarily my bread and butter, was high-rise stuff. And I knew how to capitalize on that, even kind of better than a neighborhood. So I pitched it to her. She was known as like the queen bee, and I said, like, I'll do all the work. Like, give me the crappiest split that you can imagine. Like, just let me get me in the door. Like, I know what the hell I'm doing. So I co-brand everything with her, so that's my secondary farm, and then farms 3 and 4 are like neighborhood ones around me.
Okay.
Same exact plan. I do the same exact thing for every single one.
Talk about that for a minute too. When you first started here and you were trying to work your way into into our culture, et cetera.
Yeah.
You worked with a lot of top agents.
Yeah.
And you just did everything, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and
that
I mean,
was one of the things we talked about.
Maybe attribute that to my husband. He just said, like I mean, my husband has a career, and I was lucky enough to kind of have the ability to do this, but I went to all the top people, and I knew what I was doing. I just didn't know Chicago. And I said, let me help you in any way I can. Like, don't pay me. I'll go do your showings. I'll meet your photographer. I'll meet your stager. I'll help you put a brochure together. I said, consider me a yes person. If you need someone to fill in for whatever reason, like, my answer will always be yes. And it was always yes. But it allowed me to learn really, really fast. It allowed me to, see how they did things. And I always thought if I learned one thing from, let's just call it, I go to a conference for a weekend and I learned one thing, I totally thought it was valuable. I always said yes to every educational opportunity just for learning one thing. So if I learned one thing from sitting a showing and now all of a sudden I know where the pool is on 340 Randolph, perfect. So that's really what I did in the front in the beginning. And eventually that turned into, top agent number 1 saying, hey, my client's kid needs a rental in the loop, can you go help them? And that's really kind of how.
I don't want to deal with it, but I just want them taken care of.
Totally, yeah. And I had been doing them favors for the last 6 months, so they were into it.
And then at that point in time, your farm was starting to take off after
Yeah.
month 8, right? Okay. So let's talk about your sphere of influence, which is smaller now in Denver.
Yeah.
Because you're
Totally small. I had nothing.
right, but you've got a bigger one here, but let's talk about that piece of the pie chart that you talked about.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of your processes there?
For the
you do?
sphere?
Yeah.
So one way that I'm building that is, again, my neighborhood, I feel as if nobody knows it better, and I know that other 4 agents that dominate my neighborhood, there is room for improvement, I guess. They're not thought of fondly, but they get a ton of business because they've been around the block. And so I wanted to make sure that I knew my stuff, and I was super present, and I sat 2 open houses a week, and I had all those pieces that looked good, and anytime someone came in, they became my best friend, really. I mean, I never showed up to an open house and was rushed or showed up late or didn't leave with a client. I never left an open house without a buyer that was like on board. So I got a whole like process in which I do that and how I make open houses successful. But that's how I built my Sphere, really.
Okay.
It was, you know, knowing all the restaurant owners and retail people in my farm created an affiliate bucket, right? Where I would send them an email once a month and be like, do you have any specials that you want me to advertise to my Sphere lately? And they will like hand out free dinner things and whatever, and then I include those in my anniversary campaigns. Like, I'm clearly not buying everyone dinner that I've sent an anniversary card to, but they sure as hell think I am.
Because you got an affiliate relationship.
Yeah. And then I have brokers from going, like the G&E was great, and you create these relationships at the G&E with brokers all over the country, and that turns into a bucket that you can, you know, try to send for if you have amazing properties that are, you know, potentially unique buyers for.
Okay. So the transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got a whole checklist here, okay, which you guys are going to get. Let's talk about you, the art of being referable, right? Like the goal that we talked about, you get one deal, you get one listing, you want 3 deals out of that, right? Whether it be a buyer, seller, 2 sellers, 2 buyers, maybe even a 3rd or a 4th, right?
Yeah. So I really wanted to be different when I walked into a listing presentation. I didn't want to be the broker that just put it on MLS. I wanted, and that's maybe my own insecurity, but I wanted to be able to provide a crap ton of value to that person. And I wanted them to think like, holy shit, this girl is on top of it. And from the second I met her, even if someone calls me and they say I want a listing presentation in 6 hours, there's like 15 things that I do before I meet them. And so I created, this was originally like 18 pages long, and then of course in my own craziness mind, I had to have it be on like 1 page. So there's basically 3 pages that I work with. I have a page that goes in the front of the file that constantly gives an idea of what's going on with that transaction. There's probably 20 things that I do before it even goes on the market.
Many of the things you guys are doing already, but she just has it kind of documented.
And another thing too, like the Sotheby's brand has so many tools that so many people don't use. And like I was telling Jim a story, when I moved to Denver, they have a whole new MLS system, and I knew the MLS obviously inside and outside, and I knew how to capitalize on it. And
Denver has a new MLS system.
Denver has a different one, totally different. It's like learning a whole new thing. But I knew that every time I listed a condo in Chicago, I exported any broker who had ever represented a buyer or a seller in that building. So if I'm listing the unit 340 Randolph, I'm going to export all the sales historically. I'm going to export all the email addresses of the buyer broker and the seller broker, and I'm going to create a resort piece, and I'm going to email them, and I'm going to say, it looks like you have a client in the building, I've got this listed if they're looking to expand or whatever. And I get so much action on the thing before it even goes live.
Pre-buzz, pre-market stuff.
Yeah.
And those exports take no time.
But you just got to do them. And so in the MLS in Denver, I had no idea how to do this stuff. And I thought, you know, a lot of my process was just legwork. And so I went into my manager and was learning the new MLS system. And I go in the first week, and they have all these training classes with the MLS. And so I went to 28 MLS classes in the first month, which is just kind of like me. I just do that. And so they just kind of like freaked out because like I mentioning the Sotheby's tools, there are so many things that are really, really impressive that not a ton of people use. And so like the List Hub reports and the micro market reports and like all the stuff that the Sotheby's brand gives, I really capitalize on, and I know how to use them, and I use them to my advantage. So that's a lot of what's on there as well.
So your to-do list for the listing, which you guys are going to get. Bridget's going to package this. Mackenzie brought it with her. She'll send it out as a supplement to this, and you guys can just look at what the checklist is, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think more importantly than anything, it's just that there is a process, right? Like I have a process that I don't wonder what I do when I get a phone call. As soon as I get a phone call, I do these 10 things. And then after the listing appointment, I do this 1 thing. And then after I have a listing agreement signed, I do these 20 things. And then after I get an accepted offer, I do these 10 things. After I have a closing, I do these 10 things. And that's just it. Like, I know exactly what to do with every single listing. if I have an assistant, then that they work on that checklist. There's never, I specifically create files so that if someone's sitting in an open house for me, they know exactly every single answer to every single question because I've done all the front end legwork. Yeah. There's never a time that someone couldn't step into my shoes and just totally take over because I've done all the front end work, and it differentiates you amongst everybody else that they're interviewing. It really does.
So just something about Mackenzie is, if she didn't have this process on paper, she'd be a hot mess.
Totally.
Right? Like, you have to have this.
But
That's just how you are, right? Like especially now with the twin boys.
Yeah, I just couldn't, I just go to a lot of conferences. I listen to a lot of educational things. I listen to a lot of podcasts, webinars, whatever, and you get all this input, and it's super overwhelming where you're like, oh, you need a Facebook strategy, and you're like, I don't have a Facebook strategy, and I'm going to try to do it, and I'm going to create a Facebook page that says, ABC, whatever, and then it doesn't get any likes, and you're like, well, what am I doing? I'm not doing this right. So I had to have everything in one spot, and I have one book that is literally my whole business, and it is a tab of all the things I do every day, a tab of all the things I do every week, a tab of everything I do every month, a tab of everything I do for every listing, for every open house, for every, questions to ask when you get the seller on the phone. Like, it's all automated because I couldn't have my brain be like noisy. It had to just be, I had to be confident in what it was.
You had to go from something, triggers, right? Somebody calls you off your postcard, boom, I do this.
Totally.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Because if you had to reinvent the wheel every single time, you would be...
Every single handwritten note that I write for 16 different occasions that I have handwritten notes, I have one sheet that has all of them there. So I just put it here and I start writing them. Or I give them to my assistant and she handwrites them. The execution is always the same because I'm confident that it works.
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
You did not have that in Chicago. You learned it here.
Totally.
And it worked.
Yeah, but it was a lot noisier.
No, I know, but then you had the confidence going to Denver. It's like, if I just do this.
Yeah, oh, totally.
If I just don't, I think what she's doing here, when you hear her talking about all these things she's doing and all this documentation, your mind is absolutely going crazy right now, right? Mm-hmm. But everything that she has on here, she's done once. She's doing it anyway. All she's doing is documenting it. Yeah. Between Chicago and Denver is one very simple thing that happened. She had twin boys.
Totally.
She didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? You get to that point where if you have the time to be able to just wing it, you tend to wing it. And then it isn't until you figure out that you got a process that works every single time that you're like, man, I'm not going back. Right?
Well, it's a career for me. I don't want to do this for 2 years. I want to take advantage of this market, and I know I can be efficient at it, and I know that if once I get one door open, it's just a domino effect. And so this is a career for me. It's not a short-term thing, and I had to build a business. I wasn't going to wing it. I couldn't.
Did you hear her say pumping the well?
It's like a visual that never goes out of my mind.
Right. So back to class number
every time
one,
I pay.
Pumping of the well, which is in the compound effect, which is you do all of this work and you don't see any results,
Yeah.
and then you get that first call, right? That's
Totally.
that trickle of water.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the floodgates open up.
Totally.
You're sitting here right now going, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be able to put on my calendar the day that you get 3 calls in a day.
Yeah. I mean,
when one mailing goes out.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. I think I closed like $5 million in February, and in March I was kind of like, like all I was doing is making postcards and writing handwritten anniversary card notes, and I was just sitting there like, this is not that fun at all. And then I think like 4 days ago I had 3 listing presentation phone calls, 4 buyers that were on the fence that all of a sudden were writing offers on places. Like it was just, and that just happens. And the people that can, take advantage or wait for those opportunities are those that really do wait for that and just keep pumping the well. Because I was even feeling crappy. I was just sitting there like handwriting the same thing for the 50th time, and then you just haven't had a call in a while, and you're like, is this really working? And then it was,
the reason you continue to do it because it worked in Chicago.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Right? And if I stop right now, all this money that I spent
is
going
to
be
totally, yeah.
flushed down the toilet,
Totally.
right? So your advice is, if you're not going to be consistent, don't even start.
I would like, I mean, it's funny because the other brokers that don't, in Denver, that don't have this kind of like support, and it's like so valuable, they send out like one postcard and then they're just done with it, and they have no idea. They get pissed off that it doesn't work, or they go back to other, methods or whatever, and I'm just, I would never consider a postcard campaign a failure unless it was like 4 years old. I just wouldn't. Like, there's no, I've had so many neighborhood open houses in high-rise buildings where somebody will come to me and say like, oh yeah, I get your postcards every single month, and I put them in a drawer, and when I'm ready to sell, I'll open the drawer and I'll pick them out, and I'll realize that, you've sent me 60, and then this other nobody sent me one. So obviously you're dedicated to the building, and that's happened so many times.
Back up. That one thing you said is the key. The legitimacy that you put, like if you're going to work this hard on your marketing, then you're going to work this hard on the marketing of my home.
And you're a career broker. Right? You're not. Yeah, and I think that that's always something that I have found easy to overcome in our industry. I just think that there's a lot of people who don't look at it like a career. And so if you're building a business with really such low entry costs, if you think about it, startup costs, I just think that people perceive that. People perceive if you're just kind of trying to take advantage of a crazy market, or if this is really your career and this is your life, and this is,
this is it.
You're there to provide as much value. Yeah.
100% in.
Yeah.
Your 5 rocks of marketing. We talk about this a lot, right? Like the 5 top things that you do that produce the most results. I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I'm just going to open this.
She's got a spreadsheet, I'm sure.
I do.
So what, we want to know what works for you.
Yeah. So I've always...
You've tracked, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk and look at the same time here. So I have always had, definite, I'm not just like a broker who's going to go out and sit at a coffee shop and talk to people. Like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rocks.
You have 8 rocks. Wow.
4 of them are the same farm, so I guess 5-ish. But I have, let's just call it 5, and they each have a strategy under each one of them. And sometimes I do, like let's just talk about the farm, for instance. I definitely do things every single day for the farm. I do things every single week for the farm and every single month for the farm. From a social media perspective, I try to front load all of that, and I do all of that on Mondays. I schedule it on Hootsuite so that any Twitter post, Wiki, Realty, LinkedIn thing, Google Plus, whatever.
Hootsuite is a scheduling program that you can schedule your social media posts.
Yeah, and track everything and whatever. So I do that on Mondays because, that way I'm not cluttered mentally the rest of the week with that rock, if you will. Yeah. The open house thing has been huge for me because it's put me in front of a ton of people that are potentially a little bit longer term out, but I've had open house people that convert to deals in less than 30 days.
So social media, open houses.
Yeah, the farms.
Your geographic farm for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
In Denver, I've put a lot of energy into non-real estate groups. So
networking.
Things that I'm passionate about that are not real estate related, where I'm not like in a bunch of, there's value in that as well, but if I'm the only one in the room and people know me on a personal level and they hear their friends moving or something, so like I'm getting my master's in real estate development at DU right now. So I am in front of tons and tons and tons of professors, people in the industry, and rich college kids every single day. And people know who I am because of my silly laptop. And they know that when their dad says, you should go buy a condo instead of having me spend money on rent, like I get the phone call. So I put a ton of time and energy in that non-real estate related thing. And then, we're involved in sports things or whatever. And so that is a separate whole group. So I have, a strategy in which I'm involved in these committees, but I'm not just part of a group. Like I'm on the board. picking up the dog poop. I'm on the board. I'm actively, contributing. I stay in contact. I'm not silent about it. It's annoying, but it's done in the first 3 hours of my day before the day is started. And so again, it's a checklist and it's done, and I know that that's, part of my business. Right. So the non-real estate related groups I have 2 of, and I think that those are, far more personal. They tend to be the people that want to work with you versus make you prove yourself, which sometimes happens with the postcard campaigns. But I think that that's really, I truly feel like the majority of my stuff comes from the farm because I put so much value out, push so much value out.
Okay. So social media.
Yeah. But there's a plan, and that takes me 20 minutes a week. Probably, but there's a definite plan where I don't doubt it. And if I'm listening to a podcast and I hear about an idea that I should implement in my social media strategy, it goes on the checklist and that's it. And I never think about it again. I don't recreate a Facebook page that I'm all of a sudden going to need to devote an hour to every week.
Yeah, great. So social media, open houses, networking, and of course your geographic farm, which is
totally
your bread and butter.
Absolutely, okay. Yeah.
If you were brand new to the business, knowing what you know now, what's your advice that you would give a brand new broker if you're sitting down having coffee with somebody who says, okay, I've been in the business 6 months, and what sage advice would you give them?
Yeah. So what really, really helped me was to sit down with somebody that knew what they were doing and I could trust and would put me on a direction that I know wouldn't fail. And that way, 6 months down the line, when I got discouraged, I didn't actually pull the plug, and I continued down that path. So I had to have blinders on, and I had to kind of continue down what, you and a mentor or whoever you're following behind has pushed you down, because I didn't have a choice to kind of be great at everything. I think what helped most is when you said you have to be an expert at something. You can't just be okay at everything. And so I had to be an expert at my farm, and nobody knew it better, and I was able to kind of springboard everything else off of that. I was more credible at open houses, which were of course strategically selected. I mean, I didn't do open houses outside of my farm ever. Before every listing, the first open house, I go up and down every single street, and I knock on the door and I say, "Hi, I'm listing this house down the street. Just want to let you know we're going to have an open house this weekend. It's going to be pretty busy. So if anyone parks in your driveway, here's my personal cell phone. Let me know, and I'll go ahead and tell them to move." And everybody loves you. They're they instantly hate you, and then all of a sudden they love you, and they're like, "Whoa, this is really cool." So again, they've been receiving my postcard for the last year. And so they know who I am when they open the door already. So everything that I did was very, very, very focused and really just total blinders.
That's amazing. Now, obviously, this is kind of before we get into question and answer with the group. I'm sure you guys have some questions, right? Just a few. How do you learn? I mean, we talked about podcasts, and you and I talk a lot.
Yeah.
Where do you download all of these ideas?
Yeah, so that is maybe one of the biggest things. I feel as if it's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the inputs. You read all these articles, you hear all this advice, you listen to these webcasts, you go to conferences, you hear all this advice. And I had to have a place to dump it all, and then I look at it every 2 weeks. So I have a sheet titled Talking Points of every single major thing you would ever want to talk about, and I go to a coffee shop before every listing presentation and I just read over that sheet. And they're the top 10 talking points about the Sotheby's brand, the top 10 talking points about my office, the top talking points about me and why I'm different, the top talking points about how to price your house, why staging's important, how to declutter closets, what we do in marketing, what's different, what I'm going to do on the social media side or whatever. Regardless of what the idea is, it always has a place, and I swear there's only 5 pages in my business book. And one of them is that talking point sheets, and it's been huge. The other is the marketing plan page, where any marketing idea, just throw it on the thing. Like, let's say a building opens up around you and you want to eventually open that farm. Well, that just goes on that sheet, and you don't think about it anymore until you're ready to start
You got it out
a
of here,
new.
right? You put it-
And I needed that. I mean, that is how I worked, because I feel like in this industry there's so many inputs, and you either use them in your business or you like totally forget about them and you spent $2,000 on a conference and you're mad, and then you forget about it all. But unless you put it somewhere and then you look at it later and you implement it, that's what I had to do. Like open house prep, for instance. Like I have a sheet that I do for every open house prep. So like I create a binder for the house and there's 15 things in the binder. I create a handout packet for each person, which again, that is like the sole intent to prove that I'm the expert in the neighborhood. I have a prep that involves going to every single house in the neighborhood. I handwrite each neighbor a letter. I send it out on Resora. I put signs out by 9 a.m. and I've got 20 open house signs. I write the seller a handwritten thank you note when I leave the open house, telling them how many people have been there. I bring flowers. I always have music playing. I always have branded water bottles. Like there's a process. And I think that you hear something like today, like I bring branded water bottles with Sotheby's and my contact information. Everyone will take a water bottle, right? So you hear that idea right now and you're like, oh, I'm gonna write that down. But then what? Like that sheet's gone because it's got 14 other ideas, right? So there has to be a home for everything, and that's really what helped me.
So you just had your book with tabs.
It's my whole life.
Your whole life.
But it's all right there. Like I don't have pieces of paper everywhere.
So God forbid your house is on fire, you're grabbing that book on the way out with your kids.
Right.
Right?
Totally. And maybe the husband.
Well, that was a ton of information, right? Like, is your mind spinning? So that was great. And that's, again, what there's so much, as we start to do this every 4 to 6 weeks, so many of you have the same, you've got a lot of ideas on things that you're doing. So this little piece of information, I would hope that you walked out of here with one thing. Two,
That's always
three,
my
maybe
goal.
four.
One thing.
One thing, right? One thing.